Welcome to Malcolm and We, a
Mhm.
a Zoomcast, heard and seen round the world and beyond. And I'm Malcolm Berman. I'm the co-host, and this is Jana Larson, another co-host. And introduce our guest today, Jana.
Yes, thank you, Malcolm. Our guest today is Peter Fiekowsky. He is an MIT educated physicist and engineer, a serial entrepreneur, a philanthropist, and a social innovator. He has worked at NASA and Fairchild Schlumberger Artificial Intelligence Lab in Palo Alto, taught at MIT, developed his own machine vision company called Automated Visual Inspection LLC, and he holds 27 patents. Peter's mission is to leave a world we're proud of to our children. He has worked closely with the academic and entrepreneurial leaders who are developing the viable, scalable, and permanent solutions that constitute the climate restoration path. He has worked with and built many organizations to achieve climate restoration. His passion for this important work is notable and so very much needed to address this issue of global warming, which is beyond scary and a fact of modern life. Welcome, Peter.
Thank you, Yana and
Yeah,
Malcolm.
for,
What's
for
that?
for young men, you must be busy.
I'm pretty
You,
busy.
you stuffed so much into your life.
Yeah, I keep having ideas and then talk to people and someone says, "Oh, I'll head that up." And then off we go. Yeah, there's life is
Nice
quite
to meet people like that.
I know. I know. When it comes to restoring the climate without even defining what that means, in the last week or two, we've decided to put together a group called the Climate Restoration Implementers Forum. So this is the people who are actually going to implement it and saying, we don't have to do a lot of debate. We actually know what to do, and we don't expect to have trouble, much trouble finding the funding. So let's get it started. And you can have the debate society, and you can have the implementers group. And we're inviting people who want to be involved, actually implementing restoration, actually being active, restoring the climate the way it was when we were kids. Come join us.
Oh, we'd love to.
I'm
I will definitely
Great
help
deal.
those connections come true with We the World.
Yeah.
Be practical. What are the problems? We know it's changing, but how do you correct it?
How do you correct it? Well, you get the CO2 back to what it was when we were kids. I'm 69. I'm guessing you guys are not too far from me in age.
I'm right behind you.
I'm right ahead of you.
And nature gives us ice ages every once in a while. And if you think about it, it has to pull out that same huge amount of CO2 that we need to pull out to get back to what it was 50 years ago. And so, and what nature does, not surprisingly, you're thinking photosynthesis, trees. Well, it's actually photosynthesis in the ocean. Because trees, as we know, they live for a few decades and then they die and they rot, and the carbon goes back in the air. Ocean, when you have vegetation growing in the ocean, when it dies, it sinks, and the animals that eat it sink. In the deep ocean, there's almost no oxygen. It doesn't rot. And so before ice ages, there's more algae, more vegetation growing in the ocean, and it sinks and it basically just dissolves. You have what they call dissolved carbon in the ocean, and that increases. At the end of the ice age, the chemistry of the ocean changes. That dissolved carbon turns back into CO2, and it comes back and warms the climate, it warms the planet again. But we know how nature, what triggers it to grow more vegetation in the ocean. And so we're beginning to work and do that.
So how do you do this? How do you implement it
Yeah.
specifically?
Specifically, we do what nature does, put in the missing micronutrient, and that's iron. And so how does, right, because the trouble with iron is that it doesn't dissolve, right? It sinks. If you've seen rust, it always sinks to the bottom of the pot. And that's true in the ocean. So the way iron gets into the ocean is with dust storms and occasional volcanoes and occasional whales that dive into the deep ocean. They come up and they poop and they bring back the nutrients out of their poop. And it stays there for a number of weeks or sometimes months until it falls back into the depths. So what we do is, and this has been done before, is get the iron dust. Basically, it's exactly the same iron fertilizer you put on your lawn, or if you're growing corn that you put on your corn, and dissolve minute amounts of it into the ocean. And that's it. And that's why it's so practical.
And this is going to change the temperatures of the ocean?
This will, it'll, eventually. So it starts out and once they apply it, I haven't done it myself, but I've talked to lots of people who have. They've been doing testing for about 25 years. And within hours, the ocean goes from blue to green. I mean, at first it's a little bit of green, and a day later it's very green. And then that begins to, as it grows, it pulls CO2 out of the air. And then as the CO2 gets lower, the planet cools. The same way that we've been burning coal and oil, putting carbon into the air, and the planet's warmed. When you pull it out, the planet will cool again.
Well, do we have to do anything by changing the way we use energy? I mean, do we have to cut back on our carbon emissions? You know, the carbon footprint with the oils and gas that we use?
Yes and no. That is, yes, we need to. And if it takes a little bit longer or a little bit shorter, it's not a really big deal. But I don't know if you've ever, of course you've stood in the back of a bus. Right. And so enough said, we have to switch over to clean energy.
Yeah.
Because of buses and trucks and
yeah. Well, they had that. I live in Los Angeles and California actually, and they changed their fuels. That's why our gas sometimes is more expensive than the rest of the world. Because when I moved out here in '77, you couldn't breathe.
Oh yeah. My family moved out to LA in 1955, right after I was born. And I remember being 4 years old, looking out the window and saying, "Mommy, where did that mountain come from?" Right? Because I'd never seen the mountain. And one day the wind, the Santa Ana wind had cleared the air and there was a mountain there. And for a 4-year-old, that was bizarre. Actually, even for a 69-year-old, it's bizarre for a mountain to appear out of nowhere.
Yeah, that's what reminds me when I bought my first house in I think it was 1980 in Los Angeles, and I lived up in the hills in San Fernando Valley, and I had a view. I never knew there were mountains there for about 6 months because the smog would come in and block the mountains, just as you said. Now, with your method of what you're doing, how long will it take? Do we have the time?
Yes, we expect to be operating at full scale by 2030 and have it actually have the planet back at safe levels by 2040 to 2050.
How come I've never heard of this?
That's always the big question. And I think the reason is in the history of our species, we've always been kind to Mother Nature, right? And so it's like, let's stop polluting. Let's stop cutting down trees. Let's stop. And so, as Malcolm said, we've been thinking on climate, let's stop polluting. Well, of course, that's a good thing. As I said, just step in the back of a truck and you'll know we have to stop polluting. But now we've actually changed the climate. and we see the huge hurricanes in Florida and all over the place, and the droughts and the floods, and it's just the list is endless now.
Fires.
Yeah, fires, and now we have to act, and that's a whole new script. Because since the beginning of time, when we misbehave as a community, we say, okay, let's behave, sit back, and let's clean up our mess. Now we have to we have to act and pull the CO2 out. And so it's a new paradigm. And what makes it difficult to change a paradigm is fear. When when people fight wars, they always say the military always fights the previous war, because in war you're scared. And so the brain goes back to what it's done in the past. We've been really afraid of the climate. And so we keep doing what we've done in the past, which is pull back, pull back, pull back. It worked until 50 years ago. But now we need a new script, which is, oh, wait a minute, restore. So that's why I'm excited to be on programs like this, because when we tell people we want to restore, we want to give our children the same safe climate that we were given. Easy peasy. But and once you think it, the cost of doing it is about $1 billion a year for the whole planet. So if we're Americans, the three of us, if every American chipped in to do the whole thing, it'd be 1 penny a day per person. That's it.
Well,
Wow.
how do you get, number one, how is this funded right now?
There are just a few of us funding it. I've got one possible billionaire who's beginning to chip in, but it's a matter of building momentum. I'm not a fundraiser. I do have a small software business, so I have a certain amount of funds from my business. And the challenge has been this, that imagine you're a billionaire, imagine you're Bill Gates, let's say, and your reputation is everything. And so, Bill Gates has heard about it, about restoring the climate. Now, if you read his books, he never, ever, ever, ever mentions it, because it's so far outside the box. What Bill Gates and Michael Bloomberg and Jeff Bezos talk about is what everybody talks about, which is let's cut back. Well, because that's what's acceptable. And I'm not a billionaire. And so it works for me to say the obvious, to say the emperor has no clothes. We have to turn the clock back. But again, that's not in the papers yet. But we're getting there. We're actually getting there very quickly now.
Yeah. Can you do what you want to do without cutting back on the fossil fuels?
Not really. As I said, it's the cutting back on the fossil fuels. If you think about it, it's like if you have a bathtub that's just about ready to overflow. Or no, better yet, imagine you're in a boat and it's raining like crazy and the boat's beginning to fill with water and the waves are beginning to wash over the side. You would say, well, let's patch all the leaks and let's put a good umbrella over it. That at a certain point, you've got to just turn on the pumps. And so, yes, and so turning off the fossil fuels is like putting an umbrella over it so the water doesn't keep falling in. But the boat is going to sink if we don't turn on the pumps.
Yeah.
So you got
Have you heard of something else called, I'm not sure of the name if I've got it right, so I probably should just shut my mouth. I'm going to say it anyway. It's called marine brightening.
Yes.
Have you heard of that?
Oh, yes. Yes.
Do you think that seems like a good idea?
Everything is a good idea. Um, uh, but you want to be sort of rational about it. So marine cloud brightening, it's called. And the idea is to cool the planet by increasing the amount of white clouds that reflect sunlight away.
Yes.
So especially in the ocean, there'll be more hazy days and less bright sun. And it should work, and it's not very expensive, but it doesn't really solve the problem. That's why I'm not enthusiastic about it, but it's good to do everything. the problem with there's a whole bunch of solutions called solar radiation management, or I like solar okay, what did they call it? Solar I forgot now. Doesn't matter.
Solar something.
Solar reflection. Solar
There-
reflection. It's reflecting the sunlight. And same thing. And it can obviously cool the planet. We see it before right after large volcanoes, like the 1991 Pinatubo. The whole planet cooled by almost a degree Fahrenheit, half a degree Celsius. And but it was only for a year. We didn't notice it. We're all the same age. In 1992, I didn't notice a difference. There's a little bit of haze in the sky. Um, we know it works, but the problem is if you if you try to do it permanently and keep doing the marine cloud brightening or they call it aerosols in the stratosphere, which is how the volcano does it. That it pumps chemicals that get blown up into the outer atmosphere. The trouble is when you stop doing it, then the planet, when you do it, it cools the planet. When you stop doing it, the planet warms up again. Well, the problem with that, the big problem is when the planet warms up, it warms up very rapidly, and that is death to ecosystems. And so it's a risky thing. Now, if you add that to restoration, if you add that to, okay, we're going to pull the CO2 out the way nature does, now you've got a great solution because now we're pulling the CO2 out over 20 or 25 years. And then we can also rapidly cool the planet and get rid of these horrible hurricanes.
Yeah. People fail to realize how many billions of years is our planet around. And seems like the problem started with our Industrial Revolution, which is only about 250 years.
Right.
And that's when we started using the fossil fuels, the coals, the oils. So it's really only 200 years that we started screwing up our planet.
That's right.
And so it's not inevitable that this is going to happen. I don't know if you've been listening. Obviously, you've probably been listening to the news. The last few days, but in Florida, they're having horrendous hurricanes, and it seems like especially I think the Gulf of Mexico, which is supposedly not very deep, the waters, it's throwing off this heat.
Yeah. Oh, it's
And it's going into our atmosphere, which is creating hurricanes like never seen before and water masses never seen before. And I have a friend, a lot of friends in Florida, and the tornadoes
yeah.
again never seen before.
If I can interrupt this,
Yeah.
and so we have all these disasters at the same time. I'm a physicist trained in astrophysics, and so I look in the really big picture. That's just what my brain was trained to do.
Mm.
And as you said, this whole disaster is only 100 years old, and it started with the Industrial Revolution. There's the emissions that we put out, but there's also the fact that we have 10 times more people on the planet than we did in 1800 or 1750. And of course, people then cut down more trees because we're building more houses and cooking more and so on and so on. Now, the good news is we know how to switch from fossil fuel to clean energy, and that's happening. Everywhere you look, you see solar farms and wind farms and stuff like that. And we also know how to have smaller families. The current generation of young women, a lot of them are saying, maybe I'm not going to have kids, which at first sounds irresponsible. It's like, wait a minute, our world needs kids. But, since the beginning of humanity, one of the main reasons to have kids was as cannon fodder to fight off the neighboring nations and neighboring tribes. Obviously there's exceptions to the growing world peace. The three of us, we remember the Vietnam War and our parents dealing with World War II. There's nothing like that. In Ukraine, it's horrible, but it's about this big compared to
Yeah.
what we had when we were kids and with the Cold War. The world is actually getting rapidly turning peaceful because we're discovering we are one humanity with our communications and travel. And so it's going to work for, it makes sense for women to say, maybe I'll just be an artist or, or something, or, an engineer, but work rather than raise kids. The birth rates are plummeting everywhere. We're actually on our way back to a sustainable population within 100 years.
Right, but the question is our population decreased in industrial nations or only in industrial nations or in the third world countries also? It seems like there's a lot more children when the children have to work on farms or agriculture,
Yeah.
and then they die at a younger age, actually.
Yeah, it's very complicated. And the the good news is we are one humanity. We're essentially, there's lots of subcultures, thank God. Of course, the difference between Southern California where you live and Northern California where I live is not too much. But of course, the audience for this is all over the world. But at the same time, we're one culture. And so as the Western culture is having smaller families, the countries that have the large families, Nigeria and Uganda are the biggest ones, their birth rates are falling too. The trick is, and I learned this being a parent, is to stop beating them over the head and saying you need to have smaller families. If you just say, I'm having a small family, my kids are having a small family, they'll think, oh, I want to be, like those people who I like the picture of your studio in the background, who have this very cool life, and they will follow. That always happens.
Yeah, but I'm not so sure. I haven't done this study, but I don't know whether the third world nations, whether all the women or even men know about reproduction, know about birth control, know how not to have children.
It
I-
it it's
Whether
happening.
they're allowed to, say, no, I don't want to be pregnant. I mean, if
Yeah, but
women,
I don't know. I think we're jaded being in the U.S., but I don't know the third world nations whether the women know how they get pregnant,
Mostly they do.
or it's an act of God.
There are some I mean, I've researched it, and there are some exceptions, but for the most part, it's a matter of follow the leader. And in parts of Nigeria, there's I've now forgot the name of their opposition, Boko Haram, and they do need soldiers to defend their people, and I can understand why their leadership encourages large families because they need cannon fodder. But that's going to end fairly soon, like it has in most of the world. Again, our news tells us all the disasters in Gaza and Ukraine, but geographically, if you look at it, you say, wait a minute, that's just a tiny fraction of the people in the world involved.
Now,
So
yeah,
let's just change the subject just a little bit. Have a friend in New York who sent me pictures, and the last 2 days they've seen the Northern Lights
in New York,
in New York,
New
and
York
yeah.
City.
they say there have been sun flares.
Oh, that's
How
right.
much does this have to, how does this affect us? And does our atmosphere, does that go as far as to the sun and affect that?
Our atmosphere doesn't affect the sun. The sun does affect us.
Right.
Thank God for those sunny days. Um, the solar flares, the sun has an 11-year cycle. Just for some reason, you get a lot of sunspots and flares, and we're at a maximum right now. And in 6.5 years, it'll be a minimum, and then 11 years, it'll be a maximum again. So it's a little bit like the difference between summer and winter. It'll pass,
And,
and
Mhm.
and
then
this
come
year's,
back again.
and this too shall pass. What I'd like to do is I'm fascinated by your theories on how to stop the planet warming. Love
Yeah.
to say, since I'm in communication, I love to after the show, you and Anna or the three of us get together to see if we could put together a show with you guys.
Sure.
You can either, come part of the production, or get the people that we could interview and have a whole separate type of show based on your theories of how to,
Yeah.
cool the planet down, because I think it's fascinating.
Yeah. And I don't like calling it a theory because it's been proven by nature,
Okay.
just replicating what nature does.
But I'd love to get the word out and have
Yes.
people interviewed like this. And I find it fascinating what we have now with the podcasting and the Zoom, that I
Yeah.
could talk to you or any person in the world.
Well, the thing that I want to leave the listeners with is the big action to take is sharing with people that we are going to restore the climate. And that tells young women, the planet, we're taking the planet into a sustainable world for your kids. This probably isn't the generation to have large families, but you know what? In 2 more generations, the population will be back to normal, and we will want uh, people that be having kids, and we'll have enough automation that it won't really stress families like it does today.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, as you said, we have different cultures, but we all share the same thing, and that's the
Yes.
planet Earth.
Yeah.
We're
And
all part of
we gotta
Earth,
take
and
care of it.
yeah, and
We-
And with communication the way it is, I mean, there's no reason that we can't try to reach more and more people. And, just about everybody has a phone somehow.
Absolutely. Yeah.
and anything that affects one part of the world affects the entire planet.
Yeah.
Yes.
We're no
Uh,
longer isolated.
Yeah. Well,
and our country has done so much to create the problem around the world.
the thing I've seen is I I love to look at things as a scientist, and we evolved as a tribal species, and we're always afraid that them they're going to do us in. And
Yeah.
historically, it's always been the case. The Greeks and the Romans and the Phoenicians, they were always doing each other in. Well, we're now one world, and we have to adapt to the fact that our body is going to always think that they're out to get us. In fact,
Right.
we're all in it together, and we love dancing together. And so, for communicators, the opportunity is to honor our fear reaction. Yes, we have a fear reaction. Now let it go. It was just a fear reaction. Now let's dance. Let's
And
dance.
eat each other's food, because we all love each other's food too.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
Party and save the world.
again, I grew up in New York City, and I moved 40 years ago to California. So I've always been exposed to multicultural atmosphere people. So I know people, have friends from around the world that live next door to
Yes.
me. So I'm not, but I know there's so many people, especially in this planet, or in this country actually, that only know their same type of people, same religion, same ethnicity, that they grew up with, that their families grew up with for the last 200 years. And they're afraid to let themselves out. They're afraid of what their neighbor is, which is totally exemplified by, I hate to say his name, but
That person we don't speak of.
right, but the man who's running for Republican president,
That's right.
he,
That's right.
he's he's doing MAGA, which is basically make America white again. He
Right.
wants to bring that there's no other culture coming into this country except white American Protestants.
Yeah.
From
Well,
Norway.
it illustrates what I'm saying, that we have an automatic reaction like that. And uh, of us them attacking them,
Yeah.
and it's automatic. I don't think it'll ever go away, but it's easy for us to set it aside and say, okay, good, enough of that. Now let's party together.
Yeah.
Let's eat together. Let's
Let's
dance.
follow the leader of doing good and being good.
But
Let's do that.
again, but by the way, we have 1 minute left in the show, believe it or not. Is there a website or a email that people could text you or get information about what you're doing?
Yeah, you can go to my website, peterfiekowsky.com.
And
Uh,
Fiekowsky.
Yeah, .com. Yeah, so I've got lots of white papers and videos and connections to other groups that are working on this. The name of the game though is share with people that we are restoring the climate. This is going to work. We need to counterbalance our brain, which is always looking for what's the problem, and consciously bring it back to here's where we're going. Here's everyone, be a leader and point to where we're going, which is restoring the climate.
Again, that's what I'd love to do is maybe do a show called Restoring the Planet.
Yes.
There
And
you go.
having you as like producer and finding somebody that you know that could be the spokesperson for it. Because I'm not as knowledgeable, I'm good at producing, but I'm not as knowledgeable, of course, as the people that you know. But I'd love to maybe to do a half hour, 15-minute show once a week
Mm,
with your ideas and what's happening and the new thing that you're talking about. Because for well, I know the reason, but with speaking to you, at least I have hope.
yes.
You're
Yes.
the person we've been waiting to meet, right,
Right.
Malcolm?
Thank you. Thank you. It's a
Yeah,
delight.
really, this is outstanding.
Yeah.
So,
Oh,
yeah.
one more thing is we've created something called I Am Humanity, which it symbolizes the whole planet. And then once a year we have Humanity Day, and it's 6 months after Earth Day. So Earth Day reminds us about our relationship and our delight in the environment. Humanity Day reminds us of that we belong and we delight in humanity as a whole, and just reminds us because our brain will always go back to us, them, oh, those terrible people who are driving too slow down the highway.
Mhm.
And this reminds us, okay, we're all in it together. This is a fun
Yeah, that's
party.
exciting. But
Anyway, Peter, we have to go right now, but thank you
Yeah,
very much. And thank you for giving me hope again.
you're welcome.
yes, we'll be in.
Especially now, we're doing this on a Friday, and this evening is the night of Yom Kippur,
Yes, 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 yes.
which is the Jewish New Year, and this is the Day of Atonement. But we look forward to the new year, and with what you're giving us, I'm looking forward to the new year.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
And thank you again. And I just want to let people know you're listening to Malcolm and we heard exclusively on malcolmpresents.com. And Peter, if you could tell your friends, the show should be up by tomorrow.
Oh, fantastic.
Okay. Thank you
Okay.
again. And to everybody out there, Jewish or not, have a happy new year.
Happy New Year.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.